I'm going to be talking to you all about gigs, hustles, and side jobs. So if you've had it either in the back of your mind or maybe in the forefront of your mind that you are interested in freelancing or having a side job in some capacity, this is the presentation for you. So this is going to go through all the basics and some non-basic things about how to be a successful freelancer, kind of from start to success, although obviously that's an ongoing thing that you'll have to work at, but this will give you at least the foundation and the groundwork to really get your freelance career started. So let's go ahead and get into the slides here. First, just to give you an overview of what we're going to spend the hour talking about. The first, I'll just talk a little bit about FlexJobs and myself and why I'm here speaking with you all today. And then I'll be talking about what a freelance job actually is so that we can all stay on the same page. We'll get into the freelance job market and what that looks like, how to choose your freelance niche, finding freelance projects and jobs, and being a successful freelancer. I'm going to try to cover all of that with about 20 minutes to spare, so we can leave that open for a Q&A session, and you guys can ask as many questions as you want, and we'll get to as many as we can, obviously within that last 15 to 20 minutes of our hour today. So just a little bit about myself and the company that I work for. My name is Brie Reynolds, as I said, and I'm a Northeastern graduate. I graduated in 2004 in the Human Services, what was then the Human Services and Counseling program, which I know has morphed and evolved a little bit, but still exists in different capacities. There's me on graduation day way back when, and always an exciting time to look at that picture and remember all of the fun feelings that we shared that day. So I am really excited to be talking to you all because I know we have kind of that shared history being Northeastern graduates. I am in the Boston area still, just north of Boston in Wakefield. So I know today I'm probably talking to a lot of people who are across the other side of the country in California. So if you can see me waving all the way from over here, I am waving. FlexJobs is a company that I've been working for since 2009, and we're actually celebrating our 10th anniversary this year. We list pre-screened telecommuting, flexible schedule, full-time and part-time, and freelance jobs. And so that's one of the reasons that I'm talking to you here today is because I deal a lot on a daily basis with the freelance job market and helping job seekers find freelance jobs as well as other jobs that offer flexibility. But I'm also a career and job search advisor by training. I actually went across the street from Northeastern to Emmanuel College and got my master's there and worked in their career services office for about 5 years before joining FlexJobs. So I have that background. I love helping people find work that fits their lives or that fits a need that they have. And I've also been a freelance writer since 2004. So I understand, at least from a personal perspective, what the freelance job market is like, what it takes to be a successful, quote unquote, freelancer. And obviously everyone's definition of success is going to be a little bit different. And just the kind of the ins and outs and what it's like to be a freelancer on a regular basis as a side hustle specifically. So I've been kind of full-time employed since then, but also freelancing on the side. All right, so that's a little bit about me. Let's talk about what a freelance job actually is so that we can all get on the same page. Basically, what freelancing means is you are working for yourself instead of working for a company. So you're not an employee of a company. You are a freelancer, you're a solopreneur, you're an independent contractor, you're any of the keywords and key phrases that are listed here, but you are not an employee of a company. So there are a number of different ways to say it, and you may see any or all of these phrases used when you're looking for listings or if you're talking to companies about maybe doing some freelance work for them. They're going to call it all sorts of different things. Each company seems to have its own favorite keyword. So it's important to know that these are all the different ways that you might hear it or see it out there. And then also kind of what you want to call yourself. Each industry and each career field in terms of freelancing kind of has their own lingo when it comes along with this too. So as you start researching and seeing what's out there for you, you might see that your particular areas of interest, the jobs you're interested in, the projects, the type of work that you want to do might be called something specific on this list. Or you might be able to add a new phrase to this list because I feel like it grows on a pretty regular basis. So but just to get on the same page, I'm going to say freelance for most of this, this presentation, but essentially I mean any of these things, also side hustle, side gig, those kind of casual ways to talk about it. I just wanted to make sure we all understood what I was meaning when I say freelance job. So the freelance job market, this is all US-based information. So I know we have, most of you are in California, which is great. If there's anybody who's in California, but you're thinking of working freelance from a different country at some point, it's important also to investigate what freelancing looks like in that particular country, since there are some differences when we cross borders. And also in California, there are some pretty specific and strict state rules when it comes to freelance versus employee designations. So I would encourage all of you, I am definitely not an expert in that particular area, so encourage all of you to get out and kind of research what California specifically has to say about freelancing versus being an employee. So let's look at the job market as a whole, who's actually doing this work and where it's projected to go. Moonlighters, those are people with full-time jobs who have freelance side jobs, which I assume is at least a good chunk of the folks here on the call today. That's 27% of freelancers right now. People with multiple traditional and freelance jobs, so maybe you have 2 or more part-time employee jobs and a freelance job on the side, that's 18% of freelancers right now. And then freelance business owners, also known as solopreneurs, self-employed, people who are a business of one. And you may actually have an employee or hire your own freelancers to kind of work with you, but essentially you are the sole person in charge of that business. That's about 5% of freelancers. In terms of finding work, I thought this was really interesting because even 10 years ago, this would have been very different. But 42% of freelancers have found freelance contracts that they've done completely online or remotely. And one of the big things that I look at in my role at FlexJobs is the rise and the kind of prevalence of remote work and remote jobs. So it's interesting to see this crossover where freelancers are finding a good chunk of freelancers, I should say, are finding work that they can do completely remotely. So that's one option for those of you who are considering freelancing. And then the prediction is that by 2020, the U.S. workforce will grow from about 34 or 35% right now are freelancing to 40% of all U.S. workers will be freelancing in some capacity. So that includes your moonlighters, your business owners, that sort of thing. But that's a good amount of growth, and it looks like it's, every year it inches up to that 40% mark. So I don't think that's going to be too far off by the time we get to 2020. But what this means for you is that it's a big market, it's a growing market, more people are doing it, but then also companies and employers are starting to hire more freelancers as well. So it's not a bad time if you're thinking about this to kind of get into it. Okay, so usually I get asked when people are just thinking about freelancing, well, how much work can I expect? And it's not so much how much work you can expect, it's how much work do you want to do? And so in terms of how many gigs, quote unquote, freelancers have at once, this is what we found. We did a survey at FlexJobs and we asked freelancers, how much are you working? How many things are you juggling? And so it's common, the most common thing is for freelancers to have 2 or 3 gigs going at a time. So that's 2 or 3 projects with different clients. That's 51%. 38% have 1 gig at a time. So I was actually really interested to see that a good number of freelancers have just that 1 gig going at a time. And that could be a short-term or a long-term thing where, maybe they have 3 gigs a year, but they're just doing 1 at a time and changing 3 different times over the course of the year. Or it could be, 1 gig at a time ongoing for years. 8% have 4 or 5 gigs at a time, and 3% have more than 6 gigs, which boggles my mind. As somebody who's been freelancing for a while, I still don't think I could possibly handle, 4 to 6 gigs or more at a time. Okay, so I do want to talk a little bit about freelance niches. And first, I want to describe what a freelance niche is and why you should consider having one. So I know on the call we have lots of people from lots of different career backgrounds and interests also. And, your career background might not actually correspond with your interest in freelancing. You might be looking to do something different. So I don't want to make that assumption. But essentially, a freelance niche is something that you specialize in as a freelancer. And so you might consider yourself a specialist in any number of things. Sometimes you can kind of say that you're an expert in an area or a specialist. By specialist or expert, I don't want to scare anybody off because a lot of times people think, well, I'm not a specialist or an expert in anything. How can I put myself out there as a freelancer who knows this stuff? And it doesn't mean that you need to know everything about a particular type of work or how to do certain things or every, piece of software that goes into doing this thing. It just means that you know a good amount more than the average person. And so one of the ways that I've heard this talked about is that the average professional has about a 6th grade level of understanding of any random topic. So whether it's science or politics or graphic design or any topic, we all sort of operate around the 6th grade level, and obviously this varies, but the average is about 6th grade. But so if you have studied something for years and you've worked in it for years, you certainly have higher than a 6th grade level of understanding and knowledge in some area, if not many areas. And so that's what you should be looking at, is where do you know more than the average person? Where can you help people where their knowledge fails, you have more to offer? So when you're thinking about a niche, it's really that. Where can you specialize? Where do you know more than the average client, the average employer, the average department? And you can think about that as far as what freelance niche you might want to go into. Now, the reason that you might want to specialize as a freelancer is because freelancers who specialize typically make more than generalists. So if this is a side gig or a side hustle where you're hoping to make some extra money, that's important to you. You want to know how much could you potentially make. Specializing as a freelancer will most likely get you a little bit more in terms of the income you could make than being a generalist. Now, it depends, again, so much of this depends on your career field, the type of freelance work that you want to do, but it's just something to think about as you are kind of plotting your freelance path. What niches are potentially yours to get into, and where do you have a special amount of information? Where could you specialize? So there are a couple different ways to look at what your niche options might be. First, there's the types of work. So you could do a spin-off from your most common jobs, looking back at your previous career experience. What have you been doing on a regular basis, and how could you spin that off into a freelance career? You could also go into a related but slightly different career area. So, for example, I was working as a career advisor when I started freelancing, and I did freelance writing about career advice, which was a related but slightly different career area. I wasn't writing a lot in my full-time job, but I did have a decent amount of career advising. Oops, sounds like we might have a bit of some feedback there. Not sure. Anybody else hear that kind of feedback, or is that just me? Well, I'll keep pressing on. It might just be me. Oh, it just disappeared. All right, that was probably me. Sorry, guys. So, related but slightly different career area, or a hobby or outside interest. This is another area where you could sort of figure out what you wanted to do in terms of the things you do outside of work. So whether it's sports or crafts or volunteer work, that sort of thing. Is there an area that you're really interested in and you do have some skills, but it's not necessarily something you've ever done as part of your career? Or you could do something that's completely new. And so that's, some people, it's probably a small amount of freelancers, but some people travel this route where they decide, as a freelancer, they're actually going to get into doing something completely different that they've never done before. But that does take probably a lot of extra education and skill building and, certifications if necessary and stuff like that. And then also there are niche options in terms of, the types of clients that you have. And so you could have clients that are in the same industry that you currently worked in or that you have worked in, or a completely different industry. You could look at clients in terms of the size of the organization, so small businesses, medium businesses, large. Or you could have clients who are other freelancers and solo business owners. There is this growing market of freelancers out there, and they typically, unless they're already in this kind of field, don't like to do things like bookkeeping, accounting, kind of the business side of freelancing. Most people get into freelancing because they want to focus on this area that they're really passionate about or interested in, or they have a lot of information. But the business side of freelancing is not as much fun. So some folks are able to come in and actually start freelance careers where they're helping freelancers with that business side of things. And it could be coaching. It could be coaching people on public, relations or speaking skills, presenting and things like that. So there's a lot of different ways to pick your freelance niche, but just start thinking about your own and what the possibilities might be for you, and also where where the opportunity could be. Okay, and so I am just going to take a pause because I still hear quite a bit of screeching in my ear. I'm going to switch my audio over. Sorry guys, hold on one second. Okay, I'm on the computer now. I'm going to start the screeching phone here.
Bree, I don't think we can hear you. Hi, everyone. It looks like we're just having a little tech glitch here. I'm going to wait a minute for Bree to come back.
All right, hi everyone, I'm back. Sorry, I switched from my phone to the computer audio because I'm hearing this high-pitched squeal in my ear on the phone, but it sounds like nobody else can hear me when I switch to the computer audio. So I'll go through this and make the best of it. So what I was talking about on this slide was when you're choosing your own freelance niche, you can think about it in terms of what you have to offer, but also well, that has to do with things like your skills, your areas and topics of interest, work that really excites you, kind of what gets you motivated when you go into work, or just motivated about your general career field. And then also the biggest needs in your field or other fields. And that'll kind of give you an idea of where you might be able to fill a void as a freelancer. The other thing you can do when you're choosing your freelance niche is to study the study the freelance market itself. So freelance market in terms of what you want to do as a freelancer. So look at freelance jobs online. Which ones are being listed? What are they asking for? What pain points are employers talking about? Where do they need people to fill in and pick up the slack? What are they hiring freelancers for? And then also look at how much are people charging and making in these different areas, in case that is, a big difference. You might find that one type of freelance work offers a certain amount, but another type, if you shifted your focus a little bit or, specialized in a certain area, you might be making more. And then also joining freelance groups in your field, and that can be both online and in person. There are some really good meetups. If you go to meetup.com for freelancers in certain areas in your actual location. But then there are also lots of groups on sites like LinkedIn and other online networking sites. Freelancers Union is a nice one, to join up with other freelancers who are doing the type of work that you're interested in and to really learn from them, because they're going to have a lot of good experience to talk about and share. So some examples of freelance niches, just to give you an idea of what exactly I mean when I say that. These are a couple different real-life freelancers who have set up different niches for themselves. So at the top we have Kate Schaefer's. She has set up herself as a consultant, coach, and psychologist. So she has a background in psychology, not necessarily the first thing that people think of when they think of freelance career, but she works in human resources, it says, adult education and career development. And she works to help clients meet with insights, focus, and action. So she's got that nice kind of biography that really tells people what she does, and who she works with. And then she has different sections on her site for coaching, consulting, and facilitation. So she gives you an idea of the types of skills she brings to bear and what she might help your organization with, or you as an individual if she's working one-on-one with clients. Then one to the right of that is a writer, and they've got content and copy for educational organizations, nonprofits, news and media outlets, small businesses, and startups. And I'll be totally honest, this is from my freelance writing website, but I thought it was a decent example of how a writer might tell the people, I'm specializing in a type of client. So I don't necessarily specialize in a certain type of writing, though I do write a lot about career-related stuff. But I typically tend to work with clients like these, educational organizations, small businesses. I don't work with any large organizations or really even medium-sized organizations. I tend to work with pretty small ones. So that's an example of specializing by client size. And then to the lower left corner, we have somebody who is an economist, and they're a freelancer. So they specialize in, they actually have specialties written there. This is on their LinkedIn profile: economic analysis, economic forecasting, and the whole 9 yards. You can see it there. But they've very clearly stated what they specialize in. And as you can see, each one of these examples of freelance niches, there's multiple things these people are doing. So it's not that the freelancer is just saying, I want to do this one thing for people and that's it. They have multiple specialties. They get very specific about the types of work they can do and the types of problems they can solve and things like that. But it is multiple things. So it does broaden your ability to attract clients a little bit more. And then we have Rayanne Sarah in the bottom right corner. She's a product and commercial photographer. And so she's just got it right out of there that, on her LinkedIn profile that she does this type of photography. And as you read more into her profile, you'll see that she does freelance work and all that sort of stuff. But she's got it really easily searchable on LinkedIn. And it's just, very clearly branded. So just some examples of how people specialize and what they say they do when they're freelancers. Okay, so these are the top career fields for freelance jobs. And the way that I found this was on FlexJobs, we have job listings in over 55 career fields. So this week I went to the freelance career or the freelance job listings section and looked at the top career fields that had the most freelance jobs listed in them. And these are the listings or the job fields that came up. So in case you're interested or wondering what's out there, what types of career fields are offering the most in terms of freelance work and projects and availability, these are the ones that we see hiring right now. And looking at this list, I tend to think that this stays pretty steady over time. It doesn't seem like there's anything here that is surprising to me in terms of what I've seen in the past for freelance jobs. So I think it's a good overview of the top career fields for freelancing. And so as you're looking at a list like this, I just want you to get a sense of what types of career fields are hiring for freelance jobs. Where do you fit into these career fields? Which ones of these, and there are probably more than one, do you kind of fit into, and where could you see yourself as a freelancer? And then I want you to do the same thing for this slide. So common freelance job titles. It's a little bit different. It's a little bit more specific than just the overall career field, but what are employers hiring for? So I went through the thousands of freelance listings that we have and tried to find the job titles that came up most often. And these were the ones that were listed most often. And so again, you can see there is a lot of variety. It does tend to match the, oh, sorry, it looks like we might have lost the slides for a second here. Sorry, folks, the slides kind of disappeared from my screen. It seems like this session might be haunted. See if I can get this going again. Okay, we've got the slides back. I'm not sure if they left for everybody, but they left for me, so now they're back. So again, just thinking about these freelance job titles and where you might fit into these. Now, I will say with the last two slides, I've been showing you the most common freelance career fields and job titles, but it's not the end-all, be-all list of freelance opportunity out there. So if you didn't see what you're looking for on those lists, don't worry. It's out of 55 career fields. It's out of many thousands of job postings. And so in your case, it just might take a little bit of extra work to do some research and find out what is available for you. Okay, so branding yourself for hire is kind of the next step. Once you've thought about the types of work you'd like to do, the problems you'd like to solve, the clients you'd like to work with, is actually putting yourself out there that you are a freelancer. And so I know it's a little bit tricky for those of you who have full-time jobs. Some people aren't able to really broadcast this widely, but if you can, of course, you want to update your LinkedIn profile, include that you're a freelancer. Even if clients don't find you on LinkedIn, having that information there is really good because they're probably, after they find you or after you reach out to them, they're probably going to do some research on you to see what you've done before and to see if kind of your online presence matches what you say you can do when you were pitching them. And so having a LinkedIn profile that includes your freelance work or any related freelance, your specialties, the types of clients you want to work for, the specific tasks or projects that you can work on, and also just your work history in general that supports what you want to do, that can be really helpful. You could also create an online portfolio or a simple website. About.me is about the simplest website that you could possibly create. It might take you 10 or 15 minutes to set it up and thoroughly go through it. It is one page, but it allows you to link to different sites like Twitter and Facebook and Pinterest and wherever you might have more information about yourself as a freelancer. But it is a really nice place to just get a simple overview online of you and brand yourself as a freelancer for hire. And then, of course, there's sites like WordPress or Squarespace that kind of help you build websites. It really depends on how in-depth your website needs to be. If it's just a very simple portfolio that will showcase your skills and abilities and maybe some previous work, that's simple enough. If you need it to be a kind of area where you market yourself, let's say you are a photographer and you actually want to sell prints and do things like that, you might have to get a little more complex, and something like Squarespace or a similar website building platform might be for you. For what it's worth, I use WordPress. It's a very cheap version that takes the ads off of it, so it looks like a nicely designed website, but it's very simple to put together, and it's not that much money each year. I think it's something like $30 or $40 for the year. So not a plug for WordPress in any particular way, but just, that's the one I use that I'm familiar with. And then social media, obviously you want to go where similar freelancers go. So this goes back to doing some research about your freelance market and where freelancers are advertising their abilities and their work, and then go where they go, because you want to be seen as a real professional freelancer. And so following other professional freelancers in your field and kind of mimicking a bit of what they do and learning from them can really help you brand yourself in some positive ways. And then you can also set up profiles on social media to highlight your freelancing just generally. It doesn't have to be super specific. Like, some freelancers have really intricate and well-done Instagram accounts or Pinterest accounts, but you can have a very basic Twitter account or something like that, and just, put it out there that you're a freelancer. Basically, all of these different things that you're doing are going to help clients decide this person is serious, this person has the skills and the experience and the understanding that I'm looking for, and I want to hire them as a freelancer. So the more you can put out there that's clear that you're a freelancer, that's clear that you know your stuff and you are ready and willing to help clients, the better. That helps them make decisions and hire you. So some examples of freelance branding. These are all real folks who are out there and freelancing. The first one, Catherine Hunt at the top, she has it very clearly on her LinkedIn profile, freelance bookkeeper. And then on her profile, you can see she has a good, nicely described section for freelance bookkeeping as one of her experiences. She's got an extensive history. She's been doing it since 1996. But she has, all sorts of information in there, the types of clients that she works with, the software that she uses, the types of projects she can handle. So it's a really nice overview of her as a freelancer and what you would get if you hired Catherine. Robin Maydell up at the top, she's a writer that we actually work with at FlexJobs, but she writes for lots of other clients. And you can see there, she is a kind of a specific type of writer. She does corporate writing, ghostwriting, and speech writing, which are three very particular ones. Copywriter's a little bit more vague, but that kind of gives clients an understanding that, oh, she would be able to write for us and we could put our name on it, kind of thing. Like it sort of clears up in a client's mind what you'd be able to do for them and how that relationship might work when they see ghostwriter as a writer. And then on the bottom, we have Ecile, I think, not positive. Sorry if I completely messed that up. But she has a social media manager freelance career. And you can see right there on her Twitter bio, she helps businesses plan and execute social media marketing strategies. And she's fueled by coffee and sustained by chocolate, which, yeah, me too. But you can see it's just a really nice, easy to understand overview of what she does. And then she's got a link to her actual freelancing website right there. So that's what I was talking about when I said you could set up a very simple profile on a site like Twitter. So something like that would be what you would want to do. Okay, one thing I did want to touch on is how to calculate your freelance rates. Since I was talking about, knowing how much you might be able to make and comparing rates of different freelancers, well, there is a way that you can take the salary that you've been making if you're working currently, or at least your last salary, and kind of figure out what would that be in terms of freelance rates. So I've seen this the equation done a couple different ways. Usually it's very similar. Essentially what you want to do is take your current annual salary or your most recent salary, divide that by 52 weeks, since there are 52 weeks in a year, divide that by 40 hours per week, since if you're working full time, that's traditionally 40 hours, and that gives you your current hourly rate. And then you want to increase that by 25 to 30%. Now, this is what the U.S. Small Business Administration advises, because that 25 to 30% markup is going to cover business expenses, your self-employment tax obligations, your retirement savings, your health insurance costs. I have seen freelancers recommend that other freelancers mark up their hourly rate anywhere from 20% to 40% to 100%. So it can vary a lot. I think 25 to 30% is just a good kind of average to go by if you're just looking to cover those extra expenses that go into owning your own business or running your own business. But if you are looking to kind of really increase, you might consider a higher bump up in terms of what will cover your expenses and give you some additional income that's really just, income made that you can save or do whatever you want with. So it really depends on your situation. It also depends on the field that you're getting into, because there are some fields where, freelancers are able to charge a lot more than they were making as an employee. And then there's other fields where you can charge a little bit more to cover your expenses, but it's not outlandishly more. So again, do some research. And I will find, as a freelancer and talking to other freelancers, I've always been surprised, pleasantly so, that freelancers are really open to talking about how they do this. Because as a freelancer, you're such an independent worker, you're kind of alone and off on your own. And it's really nice to be able to talk to other freelancers. So I find people are typically very open about, asking about their rates and how they set their rates and how they calculate, what they should make. Do they set it per hour? Do they set it based on the project? All that sort of stuff. There are a lot of resources on the web about that, but then freelancers individually are pretty good at opening up and talking about that stuff. So I wouldn't hesitate, start some conversations on LinkedIn, which I'll actually talk about how you can find other folks to talk about in just a couple slides. So let's talk about actually finding freelance projects and jobs. Of course, you could go to your current employer. Some employers are okay with you turning into a freelancer. It does mean it depends on your role. They might have to change your role quite a bit to make you sort of freelance friendly, because there are specific differences between employees and freelancers. But some companies are open to doing that because they can then, the upside to them is that they might get you for a slightly reduced cost than what you are costing them in terms of benefits and taxes and all of that sort of stuff. So consider them, but also past employers, people who know you and know you have a really good track record of doing good work. You can also obviously look for freelance listings online. And I would recommend going to niche sites, smaller sites that you're going to get a fewer number of listings, but they're more tailored to what you're looking for, which is freelancing in your particular career field. And so look for those types of websites. Also, social media, you can reach out to potential clients through social media, really stumbling on that one. And then professional and industry associations, another great way to put yourself out there as a freelancer and attract clients. Co-working spaces, there's a lot of professional networking that goes on in co-working spaces. And so you might be going there to work for the day, but they typically, a lot of the really good ones have calendars of events where they're getting people together who work there to talk to each other and network and learn more information about one another. And then, of course, tell your friends, your family, your neighbors, your professional network, anybody who you think might make a difference, which I would say also people who you aren't even sure would make a difference. You know, your neighbors, you might have no idea if they have any need for a freelancer or know somebody who does, but what's the harm in saying that you're, you know, oh, what's new with you this week? Oh, I started my freelance business. I'm doing X, Y, Z. It doesn't have to be a huge conversation, but then you're in the back of their mind. So just telling as many people as you can is always a good idea when you're starting out as a freelancer. And that's actually, I should say, a big plug for telling anybody you can. Through just a friend from Northeastern, actually, we went to college there together. We stayed in touch afterwards. And when I decided I wanted to start freelance writing, I had just mentioned it to him very casually. Well, it turns out his girlfriend, who I had never met in person, had just started working for a website that needed a career advice writer for college students. And that it very quickly turned into my first paying freelance gig. And it was just because I happened to mention to my friend, oh, what have you been up to lately? Oh, well, I decided I wanted to start doing this. And he knew somebody, that could help. So you never know. You really never know. Okay, so other places to actually search for freelance jobs. So FlexJobs, obviously, I think is a good resource. We have almost 10,000 freelance jobs currently listed, and we're a subscription site for job seekers, so that's one thing to know about FlexJobs. But you can use the promo code Northeastern for up to 30% off if you decide to register. No pressure. I'm a terrible salesperson, but I do love FlexJobs, so feel free to check it out. There's also a great article on Forbes.com. If you Google this title, it'll come up. It's 79 websites to get freelance jobs fast. And so I would recommend that because there are tons of websites on that list, and it does a good job of describing what each website will get you when you're looking for freelance jobs. And then I would also recommend just doing a simple internet search for your career field or your focus and freelance job listings to find niche websites to find those freelance job listings for yourself. There are some free resources on FlexJobs that I wanted to point out as well. On the blog, we ran a campaign called 100 Days on Freelance Jobs, which was essentially this presentation, but in great detail. It was an article a day for 100 days. And the information, we did it a couple years ago, but the information is still very relevant, and it will guide you through kind of the entire process of freelancing and how to do all sorts of stuff. So that's a good campaign. If you just go to flexjobs.com/blog, you can search for 100 days on freelance jobs. And then if you just go to the freelance jobs section on the blog, there are over 200 articles on freelance jobs in general. So there's some good information there as well. And the main reason I plug it is that I work with the team of writers who puts this all together, and I'm very proud of the work that we do. So hopefully you'll go and check it out, and it'll be useful for you. Okay, so last thing to cover before we open it up to audience Q&A. So if you have any questions, I know there are some questions already coming in, which is great. And please feel free to put those in now, and we'll just go down as many as we can. But some keys to successful freelancing. The first thing is to treat yourself as a professional. I know when I was first starting out freelancing, I did not have the confidence to do this, but as I got more into it, I gained more confidence, and I really saw myself as a professional. So my biggest pieces of advice are don't work without a contract. It can be a very simple contract, but basically something that is in writing that says what the client expects of you, what you are offering them, the time frame that you are going to deliver this by, and how much money they will be paying you. It can be very simple, but just a basic contract that has those main things in it. Treat freelance writing as your business. So you'll want to research tax and business requirements, keep really good documentation, your receipts of things that you might buy for your business, how much time you're spending on your business each week, because your home office, if you are freelancing from home, can be deductible. And it can be deductible actually if you work from home as an employee or a freelancer. So that's good to keep in mind in case any of you work from home just as an employee. But just keeping a good accounting of everything that you're doing for your freelance business will help you in the long run. And then I will also say, and I forget, I don't think it's a bullet on here, but find a professional to get advice from. So anything related to taxes, business requirements, if you have to set up and declare yourself as a business, all those things, look for a tax professional, an accountant, somebody who can help you really answer those specific questions, because it is sort of individualized to each person's specific situation. And so you'll want to find somebody who can really help you walk through those. I freely will admit I am not that person. I can give you the good overview, but you're going to want some real detailed expert advice for that sort of stuff. And then land and keep good clients. That's obviously a big piece of it. Landing clients is the first step, but keeping them ongoing. Most freelancers find that their freelance work comes from clients that they've had for a long time. So they just keep getting more work from older clients. So the better you can form those relationships from the start, the more work you'll get from them. So that means always meeting deadlines, communicating really regularly with them, and asking how else you can help, telling them that you are available for more work if they have it. And in my case, I found some clients feel bad because they think they're overloading you and they don't want to ask you for another thing. Let them know that you're ready to be overloaded if you are, because that's going to get you more work. And then grow your reputation. So create your relationships with other freelancers. As I was saying, people tend to want to bond together because it is a very individual way of working. So it's nice to have that camaraderie and that sort of friendship with people. And then ask your clients for referrals. Once they see that you are a really good worker, they're going to want to sing your praises. So ask them to do it. Ask them if they know anybody else who would be a good fit for what you have to offer. And then finally, just to run down the action steps for you guys today. So first, deciding on your niche or your focus, if you will have one, or even just what could potentially be your focus. Maybe you want to start out as a generalist, but eventually get focused. So just do some research about that. And then joining groups of freelancers on LinkedIn. If you go to the groups area of LinkedIn and search for, freelance accountant, freelance graphic designer, freelance scientist, whatever your thing might be, your area of work, there's bound to be a group on LinkedIn for that. And then also just searching the wider web for that sort of thing. As I said, Freelancers Union is a nice resource. Finding fellow freelancers to connect with is always a good thing. Start branding yourself online as a freelancer once you're ready to get out there and start taking clients. And then you're going to want to search for open jobs, open contracts, and then contact potential clients. Some freelancers will have to do more pitching than others. So you might find a client and say, hey, I'd like to work for them. Here are the things that I could offer. So also research pitching in your niche, because pitching is different based on the type of freelance work that you're doing. Depending, things like what you should send in a pitch, the type of information you should provide, whether you should send work samples and things like that. It really is kind of career field specific. So do some research on that as well. And then learn about the business side of freelancing and find a professional who can help you with that stuff as well. Those are all really good tips for being successful as a freelancer and just getting out there and getting started in your freelance career. Okay, so sorry for the technical difficulties throughout this presentation. I'm so glad you've stuck with us, and hopefully you've gotten some good information out of it. And now I'm excited to open it up for questions. Let's get to as many questions as we can. So I'm just going to scroll back in the chat area here. I know there were some questions before we got started here, I think from Dan. Okay, so Dan is asking about when should freelancers build emergency funds, contribute to individual 401ks or IRAs, invest in annuities. Okay, so this is one of those areas that I will readily admit I am not qualified to advise on. I would say it's always good to have an emergency fund, just in general, whether you're an employee or a freelancer. It might just be my nervous Nelly kind of tendencies, but I would say an emergency fund is good, especially if you are going to break out as a freelancer and do that for your work 100%. I would put as much money away as you can, because with freelancing, as you might have heard, sometimes it can be feast or famine. All of a sudden you'll have 3 or 4 clients who are demanding your time and attention, and then a couple months later, it's crickets. There's nobody hiring at that moment. So having that nest egg will help you have a more steady income, or at least a steady pool of money to pull from depending on whether clients are plentiful or not so much. But in terms of investing and retirement funds and all of that sort of stuff, I would definitely recommend talking to an investment professional or a retirement investing professional to see how you can set yourself up in the best possible way. And then the second question is proof of income for financial record keeping and credit worthiness and standing more difficult for self-employed compared to salary or waged workers, and how many years of records should you keep? Okay, this is another question where I would say definitely consult a tax accountant or just an accounting professional or a financial advisor to find out what those parameters would be. I have not heard any specifics about how many years of records should you keep. I would say, I mean, in general, they say you should keep about 7 years of records, but that's just for any type of worker. I'm not sure if it's any different for freelancers, to be honest, but I would say if you're just starting out, start keeping records right now. That's the best advice I can give, and then hopefully you'll be able to, have lots of years of records if everything goes well and you are freelancing on a regular basis. But just really, if you're not keeping records, even if you have been freelancing for a while, start keeping them. And then also consult a professional to find out, a financial advisor or somebody specifically who works with freelancers, I would recommend, to find out, what you really need to set yourself up for good credit scores and, when you're applying for mortgages or loans of any kind, all that sort of stuff, what you need as a freelancer. Okay. Oh, and then Dan had a suggestion here. I'm just scrolling down. If any are interested, Innocentive and 9sigma.com are two sources where you can gather a team and make a pitch to solve a business problem. Oh, that's really cool. I've never heard of those. Those sound very interesting. Thank you, Dan. And for the good questions. Okay, so do you have recommendations for a website or a place that gives a good summary of tax issues as a freelancer? This is coming from Ruth. One I mentioned before has actually a really good overview of taxes and things related to that, and also health insurance, which is another concern a lot of people who are venturing into freelancing have. Freelancers Union. So if you Google that, I forget if it's .com or .org, but if you Google Freelancers Union, you should be able to find that. They have really good information when it comes to what, information you need for taxes and setting up a business, and also how health insurance works as a freelancer and how you can actually get covered and get decent rates and all that sort of stuff. So that's one of my favorite resources in terms of detailed information. All right. How much is 1 month to be on FlexJobs with the Northeastern discount? Oh, good question. So let's see, I've got the information up here for the percentage off. So I'll start with the 30-day. The 30-day is normally $14.95 for that 30-day subscription. So with the Northeastern discount, you get 30% off that. I'm terrible at math. That's not my freelancing area. I would never try to do work for people that included math. But it's 30% off of $14.95. The 3-month subscription is $29.95 usually, and then with the Northeastern code, you'd get 20% off of that. And the 1-year subscription is $49.95 usually, so you'd get 10% off of that. So hopefully that at least helps. The 1 month in particular that you were asking about is $14.95, and then you'd get 30% off of that. And then Charlene's asking, is there a way to preview what kind of jobs are available on FlexJobs? Yes, before you pay for a membership. Yes, you can actually preview all of the jobs on FlexJobs. That's one of the things I love about the site, is that you can actually look and see if there's anything you're interested in before you sign up. So if you go to flexjobs.com and then click on, let me just triple check the language. It is clicking on search jobs. Just wanted to make sure up at the top corner, you'll come to the career categories page. You can also do the advanced job search option, which I'll put a link in here. This is actually the best way. The link is in the chat for anybody who wants to do that. You can search by job type and then freelance. And then you can choose your career field, you can choose some other categories and see the jobs beforehand. So what you'll see are the job titles for those freelance jobs, if they're long-term or short-term freelance jobs, if they are part-time or full-time, because they're the part-time and full-time, you do have both of those options with freelancing, and then a very brief description of the job. And so as a member of FlexJobs, what you would see is a full description of the job with all the details, the contact information, the company's name, and a host of other information that will actually make it possible to apply for the job. But this at least gives you a preview of what you would find if you were looking for jobs in your area, and you'll be able to see everything. So it's not like we're hiding any jobs or anything like that. You can see it all. Okay, you're very welcome. And more questions about freelancing and all this fun stuff. I know we have just a couple minutes left here. I want to make sure we cover anything you guys have. Oh, one of the things that I didn't cover, but it's always kind of in the back of my mind about freelancing, is figuring out how much time you actually have to devote to freelancing. Because that's one of the biggest things is you think, oh, I could do this on the side. How much side time do you actually have? Are you willing to work weekends and nights? And how many hours during those periods of time do you have? If you're either unemployed or you're working part-time, you have more hours during the day, just really adding up how much time you have each week to devote to this is going to really help you figure out how many clients you might pitch to, how much work you can actually take on, even the type of offerings that you could offer somebody. So just for writing as an example, one area of writing is breaking news. And so some sites will hire freelancers to covering breaking news. Well, if your schedule is very specific during the week and you don't have a lot of time to cover things during the day, you're not going to be a great breaking news writer because you won't be able to get to stuff as it's breaking. So thinking about things like that, the type of work that you're offering, whether or not it's time sensitive, and how many hours you actually have to devote each week will really help you put yourself out there and not overload too quickly and decide that freelancing is not for you, because that's one of the things that can happen pretty commonly is that you take too much on and then you realize I can't handle this all, and you start making bad impressions with clients, and it's just that bad ripple effect that we don't want. So that's one piece of advice. Oh, okay. A couple questions coming in here from Carl. What do you like best about freelancing? Oh, good question. About freelancing, I really like that I get to work with different types of clients. So at FlexJobs, obviously, I focus a lot on careers, career advice writing. I really love that, and I do some of that freelancing as well. But with the outside work, I get to focus on small businesses and educational institutions and things that I don't normally get to do on a regular basis in my full-time job. And I really like that. It gives a little bit of variety. It also hones my skills in different ways, which, you know, if you're looking to build your skills is a really good way to do it, part-time on the side. So that's probably what I like, is the variety and working with different types of clients. All right, George is asking, what's the best legal structure to use? LLC, Inc., sole proprietorship? Well, George, as you might expect, this is one of those questions where I would say it depends, and you should definitely consult a tax professional. Sometimes you don't actually need to set up a specific business legal structure for yourself. It really depends on the type of work you're doing. So I always like to give the example of my friend who is a freelance massage therapist. And because she is physically working with people and her work can have long-term physical effects, positive if she does her work well and negative if she doesn't, she definitely set up a separate business enterprise for her work. As a writer, it depends on the types of work you're doing, but the consequences of your work are much less high stakes. So you might not actually have to set up a separate, you know, LLC, sole proprietorship, or any type of business structure. So it really depends on your type of work, but I would say consult a tax professional for sure, just to make sure. And then Ruth is asking, do you have any tips or thoughts about charging lower rates for work that you have less experience in, and whether that is an effective strategy to build up experience in new areas? I would say that it can be an okay thing to do. It really depends on what you're comfortable with and how much experience you need. I think sometimes people are actually surprised by how much they can command of a client, even if they don't have, you know, tons of experience in that area. So my advice is typically to try out a certain rate, because with each client, you don't have to publish your rates online anywhere. So with each client, you can pitch them, and as you're going back and forth, test out different rates and see what the market will bear, essentially. And you might find that even with less, if you think you have less experience, that client still thinks you have more experience than they do. So they might be willing to pay you more than you think you might be able to get. So I would say do a little bit of testing, change your rates, Start at the high end. There's always negotiation. We negotiate with freelancers all the time for the freelance writers that we have on our content team. And so, don't sell yourself short, but also, yeah, in some cases, it can be a good way to get that experience and then be able to charge higher rates in the future. And then Charlene's asking, is there an opportunity to put your membership on hold once you land a freelance job? Yes, you can do that. So your membership would stay there, but you wouldn't, have access to it. You wouldn't be charged for it. So there is an on hold option, I believe. I'm pretty sure about that. Paul put it perfectly. Thank you, Paul. In other words, if you have experience that the client doesn't, you are the expert. That's exactly it. If you have more experience or more knowledge than the person you're pitching to, you're the expert. You're the specialist. You don't have to know everything, but you have more information than they do, more experience than they do, and hopefully that helps you command a good rate for your work. All right, well, I know we only have 1 minute left, so I just wanted to wrap it up and say thank you all so much for coming today and for the great questions. And I'll turn it over to Michelle.
Thanks, Bree. And Bree, you've packed in so much information into one session. I'm very grateful for your tremendous expertise in this area. And this is your second webinar with us, and both have been so wonderful. So we're lucky to have you as a expert and an alumna at the same time who's willing to be so involved. And I also want to thank the audience, the attendees, for their great questions that also helped us touch on a lot of important information. So again, thank you, Bree. I hope you can hear us clapping here. This is very helpful. And just to mention, our next webinar on a different topic will be on October 24th. And it's going to be Profit from Your Passions During Retirement or Semi-Retirement. And that's with an expert, Nancy Colomer, who also has a book on this topic. So I think there's a little connection to freelancing, but for a different life period. But again,
and just Nancy's awesome for anybody here who's thinking of, and that's a really good session. Even if you're not a retiree, there are some really good tips. Nancy's great. She did a webinar for us a couple years ago. She's wonderful. So good webinar. I might actually tune into that one.
Please do. Well, thanks again. And also just a reminder that we're always interested in knowing what topics are of interest. So please do let me know if there are some things that would be helpful to you in your career or otherwise. Again, thanks to Bree, and thanks for all of you for joining us.